hate to burst your little crazy lady bubble, but it must not have been all that great, because I don't remember you.
What's up, movie fanatics? Today, we're diving into one of the most divisive superhero movies ever made, Hancock from 2008. This wasn't your typical superhero origin story. This was Will Smith playing a drunk, homeless superhero who saves people but destroys millions in property damage while doing it. The movie made $629 million worldwide, but behind that success lies one of the most troubled productions in Hollywood history. We're talking about a script that was rewritten 17 times, a tone shift so dramatic it split the movie in half, and on-set conflicts that nearly derailed everything. But here's the thing. The weird facts about this movie are even crazier than the film itself. From Will Smith's insane physical transformation to the secret ending that never got filmed. From the R-rated version that test audiences rejected to the superhero twist that nobody saw coming. Buckle up, because we're counting down 20 weird facts that are going to blow your mind. Let's get into it. Number 20. The script was on the blacklist for 13 years.
A long time ago, I don't actually remember how long ago, called Tonight He Comes. It was an original screenplay by Vincent Ngo. This was kind of neat.
Here's something that'll shock you. The original Hancock script, titled Tonight He Comes, was written by Vincent Ngo back in 1996 and immediately became one of Hollywood's most talked about unproduced screenplays. It landed on the famous Hollywood blacklist, which tracks the best unproduced scripts in the industry, and stayed there for 13 consecutive years. That's insane. Multiple studios tried to get it made, multiple directors were attached, and it kept falling apart. The original script was way darker and more violent than what eventually got made. We're talking about an R-rated superhero story with graphic content that made studios nervous. But here's the kicker. Every A-list actor in Hollywood read that script at some point. Tom Hanks was considered. Brad Pitt had meetings about it. Even Arnold Schwarzenegger's name got thrown around. Nobody could crack how to make it work commercially. The script went through 17 major rewrites by different writers over those 13 years. Each rewrite tried to make it more audience-friendly, but something always felt off. It wasn't until Will Smith read it in 2006 and personally convinced the studio to let director Peter Berg take a shot at it that the movie finally got greenlit. By that point, the script had been passed around Hollywood longer than some actors' entire careers. Number 19. Will Smith trained like an Olympic athlete for 6 months. Will Smith, the actor, gained 25 pounds of pure muscle. Will Smith didn't just show up and act tough. He spent 6 months training like an Olympic athlete to transform his body into what he called superhero physique. But we're not talking about regular gym workouts. Smith worked with a team of trainers who designed a program specifically for building the kind of muscle that would look believable for someone with actual superhuman strength. He was training 6 days a week, 4 hours per day, doing a combination of heavyweight lifting, plyometrics, and functional strength training. Here's where it gets extreme. Smith gained 25 pounds of pure muscle for the role, going from 195 pounds to 220 pounds of shredded mass. His body fat percentage dropped to 6%. That's a bodybuilder competition level. Moving on, the training wasn't just about looking good. Smith had to perform many of his own stunts, which meant building real functional strength, not just aesthetic muscle. He trained specifically for explosive movements, learning how to make superpowered actions look effortless. The production actually had to delay filming by 3 weeks because Smith wasn't satisfied with his physique yet. He wanted to look like someone who could actually stop a moving train. And speaking of dedication, Smith maintained this extreme conditioning throughout the entire 4-month shoot, training every morning before call time at 4 a.m. That's commitment. Number 18. The movie was originally rated R and had to be recut. Hancock. Test audiences hated the dark version.
Like when you fly. Know what?
I ain't gonna fly you.
The original cut of Hancock that director Peter Berg submitted was rated R by the MPAA. It was darker, grittier, and way more violent than the PG-13 version that hit theaters. Hancock's alcoholism was depicted more graphically, the action scenes had more blood and destruction, and there was significantly more profanity. Berg's vision was basically a deconstructionist take on superhero movies, showing the real consequences of a superpowered individual with no moral compass. But here's what happened. When they showed this R-rated version to test audiences, the response was terrible. People expected a fun Will Smith summer movie and got something closer to a dark character study. The test scores were so low that Columbia Pictures panicked. They brought in editors and demanded massive changes. Entire scenes were cut, violence was toned down, jokes were added, and the whole tone was shifted lighter. This created a massive problem. The movie now felt split between two different films, the dark first half and the lighter second half. You can actually feel the tonal whiplash when you watch it. Berg was reportedly furious about the changes, but had no choice. The studio had too much money invested. The final PG-13 cut removed over 20 minutes of footage and changed the ending completely. That darker, R-rated version exists somewhere in Columbia's vault, and fans have been demanding its release for years. Number 17. Charlize Theron wasn't the original choice for Mary. Charlize Theron playing Mary, the woman with the secret connection to Hancock, seems perfect now, but she wasn't even in the top 3 choices. The role was originally offered to Angelina Jolie, who passed because she was committed to another project. Then it went to Catherine Zeta-Jones, who turned it down because she didn't want to play opposite Will Smith. They even approached Nicole Kidman, who read the script but felt the role wasn't developed enough. Here's where it gets interesting. Peter Berg specifically wanted Theron because he'd worked with her before and knew she could bring depth to what was essentially the movie's big twist character. But Columbia Pictures was hesitant because Theron had just come off some commercial disappointments, and they weren't sure she had box office pull. Berg fought for her, even threatening to walk away from the project. The studio finally agreed, but on one condition. They drastically reduced her salary and back-end points. Theron agreed because she loved the character and wanted to work with Smith. But here's the kicker. When the movie became a massive hit, Theron's agents renegotiated her deal for any potential sequel, ensuring she'd get paid like the A-lister she is. That sequel never happened, but Theron proved that sometimes taking a pay cut on the right project can rebuild your career value. The movie reminded Hollywood that she was still a major star. Number 16. The entire freeway destruction scene was done practically. They actually destroyed real cars on a real highway. Remember that insane scene where Hancock stops criminals on the freeway and causes millions in damage by throwing cars around? That wasn't CGI. The production actually shut down a section of Interstate 5 in Los Angeles for 3 nights and destroyed real vehicles. We're talking about 43 actual cars that were purchased, modified for stunts, and then genuinely thrown, flipped, and demolished. But here's what makes this absolutely crazy. They couldn't use CGI for most of it because Peter Berg wanted practical destruction that the audience could feel. So they rigged cars with high-powered pneumatic cannons that could launch them 30 feet in the air. Some cars had drivers in them wearing safety harnesses and helmets, performing the rolls and crashes for real. The insurance costs for this sequence alone exceeded $3 million. Moving on, the scene took 3 weeks to choreograph and required over 200 stunt performers and technicians. Every car flip, every crash, every piece of flying debris was carefully calculated for safety but executed practically. And get this, the scene where Hancock casually tosses a car and it lands perfectly on top of another car? That took 11 takes to get right because they couldn't control the physics perfectly. Each take required a new car. By the end of filming this sequence, the production had spent over $18 million just on this one scene. That's more than the entire budget of some indie films, spent on destroying cars for 2 minutes of screen time. Number 15. Will Smith improvised most of his dialogue.
Good job. Good job. Really good job.
Serious, straightforward look at what it would be like to be a superhero.
I started actually imagining that
The script was just a framework. Here's something that'll surprise you. Will Smith improvised approximately 60% of his dialogue in the movie. The script provided the basic structure and plot points, but Smith was given freedom to find Hancock's voice in the moment. Peter Berg encouraged this approach because he wanted Hancock to feel spontaneous and unpredictable, but this created massive problems in post-production. The editors had hours and hours of footage with different line readings, different jokes, and completely different emotional beats for the same scenes. Some scenes were shot with 10 to 15 different improvised versions. Here's where it gets complicated. Smith's improvisations were often brilliant and funny, but they didn't always match the tone of the written dialogue from other actors. So the editors had to carefully construct scenes where Smith's improvisation felt natural against the other actors' scripted lines. This is why some conversations in the movie feel slightly off, like the actors are in different movies. The "good job" running gag was entirely improvised by Smith on the first day of shooting, and became such a hit with the crew that Berg kept it throughout the film. And speaking of improvisation, the scene where Hancock calls the kid an asshole? That specific word choice was Smith's idea. The script said something else entirely, but Smith felt Hancock would be more blunt. The MPAA allowed one use of that word in a PG-13 movie, and Smith used it there. Number 14, the superhero twist was added, late in development.
I hate to burst your little crazy lady bubble, but it must not have been all that great, because I don't remember you.
The original script had no Mary character. The biggest twist in the movie, that Mary is also a superhero and connected to Hancock, wasn't in the original script at all. In Vincent Ngo's original Tonight He Comes screenplay, Hancock was simply an immortal being who'd been alive for thousands of years with no explanation of his origins. There was no Mary character, no secret past, and no explanation for his powers. He was just alone and had always been alone. But when Peter Berg came aboard, he felt the movie needed more emotional depth and a reason for Hancock's isolation. So he brought in writer Vince Gilligan, yes, the creator of Breaking Bad, to develop the mythology. Gilligan created the concept that Hancock and Mary were the last of their kind, drawn together but weakened when close to each other. This added the romantic tragedy element and gave Hancock's loneliness a deeper meaning. But here's the problem. This twist was added so late in development that the first half of the movie wasn't properly rewritten to set it up. That's why the reveal feels jarring to many viewers. The movie shifts from a redemption story to a supernatural love story without a proper transition. Test audiences were confused by this shift, but by that point they'd already filmed everything and couldn't afford major reshoots. The twist either works for you or completely takes you out of the movie, and it's all because it was retrofitted into a script that wasn't designed for it. Number 13. Jason Bateman took a massive pay cut to be in the movie.
Stop pretending that you do not care. You have a calling. You're a hero, Hancock. You're going to be miserable the rest of your life.
The actor worked for scale to restart his career. Jason Bateman, playing Ray the PR guy, was paid scale wages for this movie, which means he earned the absolute minimum allowed by the Screen Actors Guild. We're talking about approximately $65,000 for 4 months of work. That's nothing in Hollywood terms, especially for an actor who'd been famous since he was a kid. But here's why he did it. In 2008, Bateman's career was at a crossroads. He'd been successful in television with Arrested Development, but that show was canceled, and he was struggling to break into major films. He needed a high-profile movie to remind Hollywood he could carry weight in blockbusters. When his agent told him about Hancock, Bateman's name wasn't even on the studio's radar. They wanted bigger names for Ray. But Bateman personally called Will Smith and Peter Berg, basically begging for a chance to audition. He was so determined that he offered to work for scale, just to be in the movie. Smith and Berg were impressed by his hunger and gave him the role. Here's the kicker. Bateman's performance in Hancock was so well received that it directly led to bigger opportunities. The movie proved he could hold his own opposite Will Smith and convinced studios to give him leading roles. Within a year, he was making millions per picture again. Sometimes taking a pay cut on the right project is the smartest career move you can make. Number 12, the movie was shot in only 84 days.
What?
Here I come! Here I go!
An incredibly fast schedule for a massive blockbuster. Hancock had a production schedule of only 84 shooting days, which is insanely fast for a movie of this scale. Most superhero blockbusters shoot for 120 to 150 days, but Columbia Pictures gave Peter Berg a hard deadline because they wanted the movie in theaters by the July 4th weekend, and they started production late. This meant Berg had to move incredibly fast, often shooting 30 to 40 setups per day when most directors do 15 to 20. The crew was working 16-hour days, 6 days a week, for nearly 4 months straight. Here's where it gets brutal. Because of the compressed schedule, they had to shoot multiple major action sequences simultaneously using different units. While Berg directed the freeway scene with the main unit, a second unit was filming the train rescue scene, and a third unit was shooting the prison riot sequence. This meant Berg was directing multiple scenes in a single day, running between sets, and exes reviewing footage on the fly. The editors were cutting scenes while they were still shooting, which is normally a post-production process. And speaking of intense, there were days when Will Smith finished shooting a scene, immediately drove to another location, and started shooting a completely different scene with no break. The fast schedule is also why some effects in the movie look unfinished. They simply didn't have time to polish everything. But somehow, they made their release date. Number 11. There was a post-credits scene that got cut.
What, boy?
The setup for a sequel that never happened. The original cut of Hancock had a post-credits scene that set up a sequel. In this deleted scene, we see Hancock flying over a city in Japan and discovering another superhuman individual like him and Mary. This person had been hiding for centuries and was shocked that Hancock found them. The scene ended with Hancock smiling, realizing he might not be as alone as he thought. It was a direct sequel tease that would have opened up the mythology to include more immortal beings scattered around the world. But here's what happened. During the final edit, Columbia Pictures got cold feet about committing to a sequel before seeing how the first movie performed. They worried that if Hancock bombed, the post-credits scene would feel like an arrogant presumption, so they cut it from the theatrical release. The scene was supposed to be included on the home video release, but legal issues with the Japanese location footage meant it couldn't be cleared in time. Now that scene exists only in rough-cut form in the studio's archives. Moving on, after Hancock made over $600 million, Columbia immediately wanted to develop a sequel and regretted cutting that scene. They reached out to Will Smith, Peter Berg, and the writers about Hancock 2, but Smith was committed to other projects and the momentum was lost. By the time everyone's schedules aligned years later, the interest had faded. That post-credits scene remains the biggest what-if in the franchise that never was. Number 10. The CGI eagle became an internet meme for bad effects.
With a wingspan of
the worst visual effect in a $200 million movie. There's one shot in Hancock that became infamous on the internet, the CGI eagle that appears for about 3 seconds when Hancock is sitting on a mountaintop. This eagle looks so fake, so poorly rendered, that it became a meme for bad visual effects in big-budget movies. But here's the crazy story behind it. That eagle wasn't supposed to be CGI at all. The production had hired professional animal wranglers with trained eagles to shoot that scene practically. They spent 3 days trying to get a real eagle to land near Will Smith on cue. Eagles, as it turns out, are incredibly difficult to work with and don't follow directions. After 3 days of failed attempts and escalating costs, Peter Berg gave up and told the effects team to just add an eagle digitally in post-production. But here's where it gets worse. The eagle was assigned to the lowest-tier effects house working on the movie because it was considered a throwaway shot. They had about 2 weeks and a tiny budget to create it. The result looks like a PlayStation 2 video game character. The lighting doesn't match, the movement is stiff, and it's painfully obvious it's not real. When test audiences saw it, many people laughed out loud, but by that point, they'd already spent the money on the real eagle attempt and couldn't afford to redo the CGI properly. So they left it in, and it became the most mocked visual effect of 2008. Number 9. Will Smith broke 3 ribs during the prison fight scene. The injury nearly shut down production. During the massive prison riot scene where Hancock fights dozens of inmates, Will Smith actually broke 3 ribs and didn't realize it until the next day. The scene required intense physical combat with stunt performers, and despite wearing protective padding, one stunt went wrong. A stunt performer was supposed to throw a fake punch that Smith would dodge, but the timing was off, and Smith actually got hit hard in the ribcage. He felt the impact but assumed it was just bruising. Being the professional he is, Smith finished shooting the entire day, which included several more physically demanding takes. That night, he went home and couldn't sleep because of the pain. The next morning, he could barely breathe. His wife, Jada, drove him to the hospital, where X-rays revealed 3 fractured ribs. Most productions would shut down for weeks to let the star heal. Not this one. Remember, they only had 84 days and were already behind schedule. Smith was given 3 days off, then came back to set with his ribs heavily taped and on prescription pain medication. For the next 6 weeks of shooting, he was in constant pain but kept working. The production had to modify some stunts and use his double more than planned, but Smith insisted on doing as much as physically possible. He later admitted it was the most painful filming experience of his career, but he couldn't let the production fall apart because of his injury. Number 8. Charlize Theron's fight scenes were choreographed by a female stunt coordinator.
Stop!
Oh,
Stop it!
Oh!
Stop! Stop! All right, let's...
Help me! Oh!
The first major blockbuster to do this. Hancock was actually groundbreaking in one aspect that nobody talks about. Charlize Theron's fight choreography was designed and coordinated by a woman, stunt coordinator Darlene Ava Williams, making this one of the first major superhero blockbusters to have a female stunt coordinator lead action sequences. This wasn't a diversity hire or publicity stunt. Peter Berg specifically wanted a woman designing Mary's fighting style because he felt male stunt coordinators always made female characters fight like men. Williams brought a completely different approach. She studied how women actually move in combat situations, incorporating more grappling, leverage-based techniques, and fluid movements, rather than the typical punch-kick combinations. Here's where it gets interesting. Williams designed Mary's fighting style to be clearly different from Hancock's. While Hancock fights with brute force and no technique, Mary fights with precision and strategy, showing she's had thousands of years to perfect her skills. The difference is subtle but noticeable if you watch carefully. And speaking of innovation, Williams trained Theron personally for 3 months before filming, teaching her actual mixed martial arts techniques rather than just memorized choreography. This made Theron's fights look more realistic and less rehearsed. The kitchen fight scene between Hancock and Mary took 2 weeks to shoot and was performed almost entirely by the actors themselves, with minimal stunt double usage. Williams's work on Hancock helped open doors for more female stunt coordinators in action films. Number 7. The original ending had Hancock dying and being resurrected. Test audiences rejected the darker conclusion. The ending you see in theaters where Hancock leaves Los Angeles to keep Mary safe wasn't the original plan. In the first cut of the movie, Hancock actually died, saving Mary from the final battle. He made the ultimate sacrifice, giving his life so she could live. The movie ended with his funeral, Ray giving a eulogy, and Mary discovering she was pregnant with Ray's child, symbolizing hope and new life. Then, in a post-credits scene, we see Hancock wake up in a morgue, revealing that his immortality kicked in and he couldn't stay dead. But here's what happened when they tested this ending. Audiences hated it. They felt betrayed by the death, confused by the resurrection, and the pregnancy subplot felt manipulative. Test scores for the ending were dismal. Focus groups said they felt emotionally manipulated and wanted something more hopeful. So the filmmakers shot a completely new ending in reshoots. The new ending cost an additional $12 million to produce and required bringing the entire cast back for a week of filming, but it tested significantly better. The bittersweet ending, where Hancock chooses to leave voluntarily rather than dying, gave audiences the emotional payoff they wanted without the manipulation. However, you can still see remnants of the original ending in the theatrical cut. Some shots don't quite match, and certain emotional beats feel off because they were designed for a different conclusion. The original ending exists in a work print that occasionally leaks online. Number 6. The movie's budget ballooned from $150 to $250 million. Cost overruns nearly killed the franchise. The official reported budget for Hancock is $150 million, but industry insiders know the real number is much higher. When you factor in marketing, reshoots, and cost overruns, the actual expenditure was closer to $250 million. How does a budget balloon by $100 million? Multiple factors. The compressed shooting schedule meant constant overtime pay for the crew, which added up fast. The switch from R-rated to PG-13 required expensive reshoots. The practical effects for the freeway scene cost way more than budgeted, and the visual effects houses kept going over budget because Peter Berg was demanding perfection. Here's where it gets messy. Columbia Pictures executives were furious about the overruns and tried to stop production multiple times, but they'd already invested so much money that stopping would mean losing everything. It's the classic sunk cost fallacy. They had to keep throwing money at the problem, hoping to salvage their investment. And speaking of investment, the budget overruns are why a sequel never happened, despite the movie's box office success. Yes, Hancock made $629 million worldwide, but after you subtract the inflated production costs, marketing, and theater splits, the studio's actual profit was much smaller than it appeared. Columbia wanted to make a sequel, but only if they could do it for under $100 million. Will Smith wanted his full $20 million salary plus back-end points. The numbers never worked out. The budget disaster of the first film scared the studio away from greenlighting a sequel that might have similar cost problems. Number 5. Will Smith turned down the lead in Django Unchained to do the Hancock sequel.
The world's most unconventional hero is back. He redefined what it means to be a hero.
The sequel that never got made cost him an Oscar. Here's a Hollywood tragedy. In 2011, Will Smith was approached by Quentin Tarantino to star in Django Unchained. Smith loved the script and was seriously considering it. But at the same time, Columbia Pictures had finally gotten a Hancock sequel script that Smith was excited about. The studio told Smith they could start production in early 2012 if he committed immediately. Smith had to choose, do the Hancock sequel or do Django. He chose Hancock. In his mind, he had a responsibility to finish the story they'd started, and he genuinely believed the sequel could be even bigger than the first film. But here's what happened next. After Smith committed to Hancock 2, Columbia's executives started getting cold feet about the budget again. They kept pushing the start date back, demanding script rewrites, and trying to reduce Smith's salary. Meanwhile, Tarantino cast Jamie Foxx in Django, and that movie became a massive critical and commercial success. Foxx was nominated for an Academy Award. The film revitalized his career, and the Hancock sequel, it never happened. By the time Columbia finally pulled the plug in late 2012, it was too late for Smith to get back into Django. Smith has admitted in interviews that turning down Django for a sequel that never materialized is one of his biggest career regrets. He potentially missed out on an Oscar-worthy role for a franchise that died before the second film could be made. Number 4. Peter Berg and Will Smith fought constantly on set.
I want people to have fun, as they would at any superhero film. I mean, it's just fun to see superheroes behaving like...
The director and star had creative differences. Behind the scenes, Hancock's production was marked by constant creative tension between Peter Berg and Will Smith. Berg wanted to make a darker, more serious deconstruction of superhero tropes. Smith wanted to make a crowd-pleasing summer blockbuster with heart. These competing visions clashed throughout filming. There were days when they weren't speaking to each other directly and communicated only through producers. Here's how bad it got. Berg would set up a shot one way, Smith would disagree and want it different, and they'd argue for an hour while the crew waited. Smith, being the bigger star and having more clout, usually got his way. This frustrated Berg, who felt his artistic vision was being compromised. But here's the thing. They were both right in their own ways. Berg's instincts made the film more interesting and unconventional. Smith's instincts made it more accessible and commercially viable. The final film is literally a compromise between their two visions, which is why it feels tonally inconsistent. Some scenes have Berg's gritty edge, others have Smith's charm offensive. Moving on, despite their on-set conflicts, both have spoken respectfully about each other in interviews. Berg admitted that Smith's star power and instincts saved the movie from being too dark and uncommercial. Smith acknowledged that Berg pushed him to give a more complex performance than he initially planned. Their conflict actually made the movie more interesting, even if it made production hell. Number 3. The superhero mythology was inspired by ancient Sumerian texts.
Now, and that's still in 310, right? Hang on one second. Do me a favor?
The writers did deep research into ancient civilizations. When Vince Gilligan was brought in to develop the mythology of Hancock and Mary's origins, he didn't just make stuff up. He actually researched ancient civilizations and mythologies, particularly Sumerian texts that reference beings described as gods who walked among humans. The concept that Hancock and Mary are drawn together but weakened when close comes from ancient Sumerian stories about divine pairs who were powerful apart but vulnerable together. Gilligan found this theme recurring in multiple ancient cultures and decided to use it as the foundation for the film's mythology. Here's where it gets really geeky. In the original script, there were references to Hancock and Mary being part of a species that ancient humans worshipped as gods. The Sumerians, Egyptians, and Greeks all had stories about these beings. The eagle symbol that appears throughout the movie is actually a reference to ancient Sumerian iconography representing immortal beings. Most of this context was cut from the final film to keep the runtime down. But if you know what to look for, the clues are there. The scene where Mary explains their history to Hancock originally included much more detail about their species, their purpose on Earth, and why they're dying out. That extended scene exists in the script but was never filmed due to budget constraints. Gilligan later said he wanted to explore this mythology much deeper in the sequel that never happened. Number 2. The homeless aesthetic was Will Smith's idea. The actor insisted Hancock look genuinely rough. The look of Hancock in the first act, unshaven, dirty, wearing the same clothes for weeks, was entirely Will Smith's idea, and it caused major pushback from the studio. Columbia Pictures executives were nervous about making their biggest star look genuinely homeless and unattractive. They worried audiences wouldn't accept Will Smith as a dirty, alcoholic bum even if he had superpowers. Studio heads wanted Hancock to look rough but still maintain Smith's movie star appeal. Think rugged rather than homeless. Smith fought hard for the authentic homeless look. He argued that if Hancock was truly a depressed alcoholic who'd given up on life, he wouldn't care about his appearance. To prove his point, Smith actually lived on the streets for 3 nights before filming began, sleeping in doorways and refusing to shower or shave. He wanted to understand what homelessness actually felt like physically and emotionally. The experience deeply affected him and made him even more committed to the authentic portrayal. Here's the compromise they reached. Hancock would look genuinely homeless in the first act, but his transformation would be even more dramatic when Ray cleans him up. This made the before and after more satisfying for audiences. And speaking of commitment, Smith refused to wash his costume throughout the first act of filming. The wardrobe department hated this because the clothes started genuinely smelling bad after weeks of shooting, but Smith insisted it helped him stay in character. Number 1. There are 3 different versions of the movie in existence.
Hey, Hancock. Hancock.
The theatrical, unrated, and legendary deleted director's cut. Here's the number 1 fact that'll blow your mind. There are actually 3 distinct versions of Hancock in existence, and most fans have only seen one. First, there's the theatrical PG-13 cut that played in cinemas worldwide. Second, there's the unrated extended edition released on DVD and Blu-ray, which added back about 10 minutes of footage and restored some of the edgier content. But here's where it gets legendary. There's a third version, Peter Berg's original director's cut, that's never been officially released. This cut is approximately 2 hours and 40 minutes long, rated R, and includes the original darker ending, extended mythology explanations, more violent action scenes, and significantly more character development. It's the version Berg intended to make before studio interference. This cut has achieved mythical status among film fans. Only a handful of people have seen it, mostly studio executives and test audiences from 2007. Berg has mentioned it in interviews and said he'd love to release it someday, But Columbia Pictures owns the footage and has shown no interest in releasing what they consider a commercially unviable version. Bootleg work prints occasionally leak online, but they're incomplete and of poor quality. The full director's cut exists in Columbia's vault with finished visual effects and sound mixing. It's a complete film that's simply being suppressed. Film preservation advocates have been petitioning for years to get this version released, arguing it represents the director's true vision. Maybe someday we'll see it, but for now it remains one of Hollywood's most sought-after, unreleased films. And there you have it. 20 weird facts about Hancock that even die-hard fans probably didn't know. From a script that lived on the Hollywood blacklist for 13 years, to Will Smith turning down an Oscar-worthy role for a sequel that never happened. From broken ribs and fake eagles to 3 different versions of the film existing in vaults, this movie's behind-the-scenes story is almost as crazy as the film itself. If you enjoyed this deep dive into one of Hollywood's most troubled productions, smash that like button and subscribe for more behind-the-scenes secrets from your favorite movies. Hit the notification bell because we've got more incredible film stories coming your way. Until next time, keep watching movies, and remember, sometimes the craziest stories happen behind the camera, not in front of it. Good job!